There is a type of man who looks calm on the outside, but inside he is rotting. He wakes up tired. He works a job he does not respect. He buys things he does not need. He performs a personality he did not choose. He scrolls, he consumes, he obeys, and every day he feels a little less alive. He does not know what he wants, only what he is supposed to want: a better apartment, a more impressive job title, a body others approve of, a life that looks acceptable from the outside. But beneath that carefully arranged surface, something begins to whisper. This cannot be all there is. That whisper is where Tyler Durden appears, not as a man, as a fantasy, the fantasy of total freedom, the fantasy of saying what no one else dares to say, the fantasy of burning down a fake life and finally feeling real. To many viewers, Tyler Durden looks like strength, confidence, masculinity, rebellion. But Friedrich Nietzsche would have seen something more disturbing. He would not have simply admired Tyler. He would have diagnosed him. Because Tyler Durden is not the Übermensch. He is what appears when weak men begin to hate their weakness, but do not yet know how to overcome themselves. And that distinction changes everything. Nietzsche imagined a terrifying figure, the last man. Not a monster, not a tyrant, something worse. A human being who no longer strives, no longer risks, no longer creates, no longer believes deeply in anything. The last man wants comfort above all else. He wants safety, entertainment, convenience, a small pleasure for the day, a small pleasure for the night, and nothing that demands transformation. Nietzsche's fear was not that humanity would become too violent. It was that humanity would become too domesticated, too careful, too satisfied with mediocrity, too afraid of pain, greatness, and difference. Now, look at the narrator of Fight Club. He is not starving. He is not homeless. He is not oppressed in the traditional sense. He has a job, an apartment, designer furniture, the symbols of success. And yet he is spiritually empty. His life is not destroyed by suffering. It is anesthetized by comfort. This is exactly why Tyler becomes necessary. Tyler enters the story as the opposite of sterile modern life. Where the narrator is numb, Tyler is intense. Where the narrator obeys, Tyler disrupts. Where the narrator consumes, Tyler destroys. In scholarly analyses of Fight Club, the film is repeatedly read as a critique of consumerism, conformity, and the way corporate culture hollows out identity. The narrator's world is presented as materially full but existentially vacant. But Nietzsche would ask a harder question. When a man hates his comfortable prison, does that automatically make him free? No. A slave who rebels against his chains is not yet a creator. He may still be defined entirely by what he hates. This is where Nietzsche's concept of ressentiment becomes crucial. Ressentiment is not ordinary anger. It is resentment that cannot act directly, so it begins to reinterpret the world morally. The weak man says, "I am not powerless, I am good. I am not afraid, I am peaceful. I do not lack ambition, I simply reject success. I do not envy strength, strength is evil." In On the Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche argues that this kind of reactive morality arises when powerless people transform their inability to act into a claim of moral superiority. Instead of creating values from strength, they condemn what they cannot attain. Now return to Tyler Durden. At first glance, Tyler seems free from resentment. He laughs at social rules, he rejects brands, he mocks status, he exposes the emptiness of modern life. But look closer. Tyler does not merely transcend the world of consumption. He becomes obsessed with destroying it. He does not create a higher culture. He creates a cult. He does not cultivate independent men. He produces obedient followers. He begins by rejecting conformity, then builds a new conformity more absolute than the first. Project Mayhem has uniforms, rules, rituals, erased identities. The men who once felt trapped by corporate life now surrender themselves to another machine. Nietzsche would recognize the danger immediately. When rebellion is fueled primarily by hatred, it often reproduces the very structure it claims to destroy. A man who cannot create will often settle for negation. He cannot build a world, so he dreams of burning one down. This is not strength, it is ressentiment wearing leather. Still, Tyler is seductive for a reason. He says what many people are afraid to admit, that modern comfort often feels humiliating, that a life organized entirely around safety can become a quiet death, that people decorate their identities with products because they no longer know who they are. The narrator buys a couch because he has no self. He fills his apartment because he cannot fill his soul. Tyler attacks this illusion with brutal precision. The scholarship around Fight Club often emphasizes how the film links consumer culture to the collapse of selfhood and to a distorted search for masculinity and meaning. Tyler's charisma emerges because he names a real emptiness. Nietzsche would agree with Tyler on one essential point. A borrowed life is not a life. Nietzsche despised herd values, values accepted simply because everyone else accepts them. He distrusted moral systems, social habits, and cultural pieties that discourage exceptional individuals from becoming what they are. So yes, Nietzsche would understand the disgust Tyler feels. He would understand the rage against hollow status, against mass-produced identities, against lives spent pursuing approval. But Nietzsche would also warn, disgust is not destiny. Contempt is not creation. Destruction is not self-overcoming. Tyler can expose weakness, but he cannot teach true strength. This is where many people misunderstand Nietzsche. They think Nietzsche glorifies domination, brutality, and raw aggression. But his deeper concern is self-overcoming. The greatest struggle is not against society, not against your boss, not against consumer culture, not even against your enemies. The greatest struggle is against the lesser version of yourself, the coward within you, the resentful self, the self that hides behind excuses, the self that chooses comfort because transformation is frightening. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche repeatedly associates life with overcoming, with becoming, with surpassing fixed forms of the self. He is not celebrating mindless violence. He is demanding inner transformation. Now compare that to Tyler's method. Tyler forces pain. He humiliates weakness. He destroys social illusions, but he never truly teaches integration. He offers shock, not mastery. He tells broken men to fight, but not how to become whole. He turns suffering into a ritual, but not into wisdom. He gives them intensity, but not individuality. And this matters, because Nietzsche's higher type is not just someone who rejects the herd. It is someone capable of forming a self strong enough to legislate values from within. Tyler's followers do not become creators. They become copies. This is why Tyler is not the cure. He is a symptom. Why does pain become so important in Fight Club? Because pain proves that the narrator still exists. His daily life is abstract, corporate, digital, insulated. Pain is concrete. A punch in the face cannot be outsourced. A bruise cannot be gamified. Blood cannot be reduced to branding. In this sense, the Fight Club functions as a desperate attempt to return to immediacy, embodiment, and reality. The men are not merely fighting each other, they are fighting numbness. Studies of the film often point out that its violence is bound up with alienation, crisis of identity, and a desire to break through the flattening effects of late consumer culture. Nietzsche would understand the hunger for intensity. He knew that life affirmation requires saying yes not only to pleasure, but also to struggle, risk, and difficulty. Yet Tyler makes a critical mistake. He turns pain into proof of authenticity, as if suffering itself were sacred, as if injury automatically made a man more real. as if destruction automatically produced depth. Nietzsche would reject that simplification. Pain can deepen you, or it can embitter you, it can awaken you, or it can deform you. Suffering is not automatically meaningful. It becomes meaningful only when it is transformed. That transformation is the hard part. Tyler skips it. Another reason Tyler is often mistaken for a Nietzschean figure is that he appears to embody master morality. He is bold, assertive, unashamed. He imposes his will. But Nietzsche's contrast between master and slave morality is not a shallow celebration of whoever dominates others. Master morality, in Nietzsche's genealogical account, arises from a powerful mode of valuation. The noble type names what is good from a position of self-affirmation. Slave morality, by contrast, defines itself reactively against an enemy. So ask carefully, does Tyler create from abundance? Or does he react from negation? Does he possess himself? Or is he possessed by hatred for the world he rejects? He says, in effect, all of this is fake, all of this must fall. But what comes after? Not art, not philosophy, not nobility, not a new rank of human excellence, only erasure, only collapse, only a fantasy of purification through violence. That is not Nietzsche's highest possibility. That is what happens when someone confuses anti-conformity with self-mastery. Tyler Durden remains powerful because he gives form to impulses that modern people are ashamed of. The desire to quit, to stop pretending, to insult the false gods of careerism, consumption, and polite emptiness, to feel dangerous instead of managed. He dramatizes a fantasy of escape from domestication. But what people often miss is that Fight Club does not simply glorify Tyler. It shows how seductive anti-consumerist rebellion can mutate into authoritarian submission and mass de-individuation. Scholars have long noted that the film's rhetoric of masculinity and violence is satirical and deeply ambivalent, not a straightforward manifesto. Nietzsche would likely say, the modern man does not need a Tyler Durden to command him. He needs a self strong enough that no Tyler Durden is necessary, because the man who cannot command himself will search for someone else to do it. A boss, a guru, a movement, a tribe, a charismatic rebel. It makes little difference. Obedience in a suit and obedience in a black uniform are still obedience. So what would Nietzsche demand instead? Not passive comfort, not shallow rebellion, not moral resentment, not theatrical destruction. He would demand that you confront the truth. You have inherited desires you did not choose. You repeat judgments you never examined. You call certain things good because you were rewarded for saying so. You call certain things bad because the herd taught you to fear them. And beneath all that, your actual self remains unfinished. Nietzsche's challenge is not be violent, be cruel, dominate others. It is far more difficult. Become capable of creating a life you can affirm. A life that is not borrowed, not reactive, not built out of envy, not organized around being seen as good. A life shaped by discipline, clarity, courage, and the willingness to outgrow your previous self. This is the real opposite of weakness, not Tyler's chaos, self-command, not destruction for its own sake, transformation, not contempt for the herd alone, freedom from needing the herd to define you at all. Tyler Durden should not be discarded. He should be understood. He is the scream that erupts when a man has lived too long against his own nature. He is the fantasy born when comfort becomes suffocation. He is the revolt of the numb. But he is also a warning. If you do not consciously build yourself, your frustration may build a monster in your place. If you never learn to speak with your own voice, you may become vulnerable to any voice that sounds stronger than yours. If you reject false values without creating higher ones, you do not become free. You become empty, and emptiness is easily weaponized. Nietzsche saw the danger of nihilism, the collapse of old values without the birth of stronger ones. That collapse does not always produce liberation. Sometimes it produces fanaticism, resentment, and self-destruction. Tyler Durden lives in that gap, the gap between the death of old meanings and the failure to create new ones. So no, Nietzsche would not tell you to become Tyler Durden. He would tell you to ask why Tyler Durden appeals to you in the first place. What part of your life feels false? What part of you has become too obedient? What comfort has made you smaller? What fear has disguised itself as morality? What resentment have you mistaken for insight? And most of all, are you actually becoming stronger, or are you simply becoming angrier? Because anger can feel like power to a man who has avoided power his entire life. But rage is not sovereignty. Noise is not depth. Rebellion is not self-overcoming. The highest form of strength is not the ability to destroy a world. It is the ability to create a self that no false world can own. That is Nietzsche's challenge, and most people will never accept it. Do not become Tyler Durden. Become the kind of man who no longer needs him,